A good evening to everybody who's joining us live for this special episode of Hello Kolkata podcast, Kolkata Calling's very own podcast series. We have a very exciting guest that we'll be speaking to today. A lot of you might be wondering why we are doing it on 5 p.m. on a Sunday instead of 11 a.m. on Sunday that we usually do. We had to go through some last minute changes in plans. We had to swap a few guests because of some prior commitments and travel. So we managed to get a slot, and we didn't want to skip a Sunday. We want to be consistent on that front. So we are coming on live on a Sunday evening, 5 p.m. It's a great, time of the year. I think winter is going away, summer's coming in, so we'll have a lot to look forward to. So before I go into introducing our guest today, wanted to very quickly say something very close to our hearts. The Kolkata Calling page just hit 20K, 20,000 members, followers on LinkedIn, which is fantastic news for us. It's a milestone. We don't want to get too, I would say overconfident about that, but it's a testament to the support and love that we've received from the community over the past 2 years. When Sneha and I started this page 2 years ago, we really didn't know that we'd hit this mark so soon. But it's taken us a while. We've gone through our periods of highs and lows of managing this page. But yeah, today we are at 20K and we want to grow further. So thank you to everybody who's been part of this community, who's joined us as members, followers, and have shared their valuable feedback and inputs with us. And what I realized when we were, talking about 20K, hitting 20K, it's an important milestone. We are nothing without our community members. So a lot of gratitude goes out to each and every member who's been part of the Kolkata Calling journey over the past 2 years. You are everything that makes this page what it is today. We put out good content about Kolkata, that's all great. But if there is no audience for that, if there is no reception for that, if there is no, I would say, approval for that, then the page really doesn't work. So while we will continue to do our best to bring you good content, positive news about Kolkata, we would love to continue to have your support that's made our page what it is. So whether it's your showering of love and affection on our posts, or sometimes even giving us fair criticism about some things that you did not appreciate about the page or its content, we are more than welcome. We are more than welcoming to take all of that in our stride. And also a very special shout out to Moinak, who's been our intern for a while now. He reminded me that it's been 6 months I've been interning with Kolkata Calling. I said, wow, fantastic. Time really flew by. But Moinak has had a very strong impact on the page in terms of all the research and content that he's brought to you, in terms of all the creative stuff that he's done, making our presence felt on different platforms. We've launched the YouTube channel. All our episodes of the podcast are on Spotify and Amazon Music as well. That's all Moinak. And the way that we've grown in the last few months, ever since Moinak has been there, it's been tremendous. So I know we'll have to let him go very soon because Moinak is graduating and he's going to go into a full-time job. And he's looking for a marketing role. So if anybody's listening to this, please find Moinak and hire him because he's fantastic. So it's a bittersweet thing for us that we'll have to let Moinak go very soon. But the impact that he's had on the page has been tremendous. So Moinak, if you're listening to this today, thank you so much for everything that you've done for us. All right. Very quick recap about the week that was. Sounds like John Oliver right now, but the post about the Kolkata Metro continues to give us a lot of dividends. It's almost about to hit, 3,000 likes, about 150K impressions, 150,000 impressions, which is unheard of for our page. So that's fantastic. Another great news was the video that we shared about the Infosys Development Center, the original one, while we await the Infosys new campus coming up in Newtown. That post also got tremendous love from all of you. Again, 2,000 likes and I think close to 100K impressions. So again, when we look at those numbers, we know that you are behind that, and we again express our gratitude for that love that you show. Motorworld launched its factory in Kolkata for electric vehicles. So that's again fantastic news. Two great news on the technology front. Reliance Jio data center is taking shape in the Bengal Silicon Valley, as well as Singapore Telecom's STT's data center that's coming up in Newtown as well. So two big data center developments that are coming up, which can only be positive for the Kolkata's technology ecosystem. There was also an acquisition that happened with Gainwell Group, which has been based out of Calcutta for very long, and it's a fantastic organization, which is the leading dealer of Caterpillar heavy equipment that you see in construction sites. They've acquired TIL Limited, which is formerly Tractors India Limited, and I believe that this investment, this merger, will only make the synergies, speak volumes for Kolkata's development going forward. We also shared some views from Mr. Parvez Khalid, who is the Associate Director, Executive Director at CBRE, and where he talked about how the commercial real estate boom, as well as the growth of the office sector in Kolkata has been phenomenal in the last 6 to 8 months. So there's a lot to look forward to, a lot of positive developments. These are all lead indicators that we can see in terms of how companies are focusing their, I would say, intent on being based in Kolkata and expanding their presence in Kolkata. A couple of more. Atlassian, the community, the great Atlassian community, which is global, is organizing its first in-person event on 23rd March in Kolkata, in Newtown. So the details are on our page. You can go ahead and register for it. If you are a development DevOps professional, you can definitely get a lot of benefits by attending that event. Thank you, Shoman sir, for sharing that event with us. Please feel free to find the event details on our page and register if that is in your line of work. I think, and last week we were the ecosystem partner for the TIE Kolkata HR Summit, and it was a fantastic event, and we shared a lot of pictures. In the coming week, we are also again the ecosystem partner for a Kolkata startup mixer, which has been brought to you by my operator, HeoPhone, and Begin by Zoho CRM, the company. That's happening on 22nd March. Again, the details are on our page. So if you haven't already registered, please feel free to do so. 22nd March at Offbeat CCU. We've got a fantastic lineup of speakers who will be there, startup founders, business heads. It will be a great evening. And I think that's pretty much it to cover the week that was. We'll get into the podcast now. We've also published a number of job opportunities and the talent spotlight section as promised in our newsletter. So if you haven't already checked those out, please do. You could refer your friend. You could apply to it yourself. All of that can be done. We are trying our best to match the talent demand and supply. Newsletter is probably the easiest way to do it, but it's not the most, I would say, optimum way to do it. We'll figure out what's the best way to match talent and opportunities in Kolkata. We'll keep you posted on that. So with that, now let's get into our podcast today with our guest. Today, we have Aparajita Banerjee, and I'll give you a quick introduction of Aparajita, and then obviously we'll get to know more about her from her mouth. Aparajita is the founder and CEO of Astrit Research and Advisory Private Limited, and we'll talk about Astrit as well. Apart from being the founder and CEO of Astrit, she's held various important leadership positions in her career, which includes being the chairperson of the East India chapter of the Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce. She has a very strong Australia connection, which we'll find out later in the podcast. She's also been on the member of the board of advisors and chairperson East India Council at ANZIndia Business Chamber. She's been a strategic advisor at Krozeus Consulting in Australia, and she has been a researcher and an academic at RMIT University in Melbourne. She's an MBA in International Business from the University of Melbourne, holds a degree in Bachelors of Applied Science, Experimental Psychology and Statistics from RMIT University, as well as a Master's in Supply Chain and Logistics Management from RMIT University. So we'll figure out how all those different educations and different fields have led to building Astrit as well. And the Kolkata connection, which we'll dive deeper into, but she's also an alumnus of Calcutta International School. She was born and brought up in Calcutta, and then after a stint in Australia, she's back again in India. A little bit about Astrit. Astrit, as I mentioned, is a research and advisory firm that provides services to international public and private enterprises looking to export their services to the Indian market. And in their own words, its vision is to create an integrated and conducive platform for international businesses to foster new bilateral footprints between India and other countries. And the mission is to generate new business pulses across various cultural synapses and create a seamless platform that facilitates bilateral trade and cultural agreements. Astrit is committed in creating value and opportunities by managing international businesses, operations, and skill sets with a myriad of integrated services, including, and these are the services that Astrit offers, and we'll hear more from Aparajita herself. It includes market research and analysis, supply chain and logistics management, project management, integrated risk management, and training and mentoring for existing businesses and startups in various industries. So with that, let me bring in Aparajita. Aparajita, you are live with us on Hello Kolkata podcast. Thank you so much for accommodating and being live with us today.
Thank you, Shubhi. Then the team at Hello Kolkata Calling, and I'd like to congratulate you once again for hitting 20K. Fascinating, and I hope you do hit the 100K eventually. So congratulations to you and your team.
Sure. Thank you so much. Aparajita, so I mean, obviously, I gave probably I did a very poor job at introducing you and Astrit. But once we'll get into about the professional side of your career. But before we go there, would love to understand a little bit about you as a person and your journey, because during our research and during our earlier conversation, what I felt, and you could agree or disagree, that you also embody the spirit of Kolkata Calling that we have on our page, is that you were born in Kolkata, spent early years in Bengal, Orissa, but then you had to move around due to your father's transferable job. You were in UK, Bahrain, and then Australia. And then after a while, you decided to come back to Kolkata. So if you can take us through a little bit about your early childhood, your journey, and navigating these different countries and cultures while growing up.
It's been a roller coaster ride, from memory, from what I can recall. I was actually born in Howrah, so
Okay.
not technically from Calcutta, but obviously for an outsider, that's not much difference. And so basically, the first 2 years were shuttling between Calcutta, Howrah, and Orissa, Bhubaneswar. That's where my paternal family was actually from, the Bengalis, but who settled in Bhubaneswar. And then basically at the age of 2, my father, he decided to study abroad in Sydney University and got a Commonwealth scholarship. So we went to London for a year. And after that, it's just been journeying, like after that, from London, it was back to Calcutta for maybe 1 month, and then again to the Middle East, and then from Middle East, as you said, to Sydney first, and then basically back to Middle East for a year again, and then back to Australia. And then having stayed there for like 3 to 4 years, we had a tragedy in our family. My father passed away. So because of that, we actually came back to Calcutta in 96. I stayed here for 3.5 years to 4 years, and then back to Australia till 2017, and then came back to Calcutta. So technically that's the technicality of the move. But if you're talking about the impact or the effect, obviously it's, I guess it's made me more resilient and more accepting of different cultures, and very curious about a country and a city that I am from originally, but I did not have much understanding of previously, which is Calcutta.
Yeah. And I think, when I look at your personal journey growing up in various countries, and then when I look at what you are doing, where you're facilitating international trade agreements, MOUs between different cultures and different countries, I think that plays a role somewhere in your professional sphere as well. I would like to understand, Aparajita, you spend, a majority of your adult life, education, career in Australia. What prompted you to sort of move back to India in general, and then Kolkata in particular? Because obviously you have a Kolkata connection, but what prompted that move back?
I think that in everybody's life, it's an assumption, should be, but there comes a time when you're really looking for something beyond the business as usual, so to speak, in management terms, and you want to explore something that you've been curious about for a long time, but you've had no real life experience in. When I decided to come back, it's been festering, if I can use that term, for a long time in my subconscious, but obviously I didn't really get the opportunity, and I realized that if I don't make the move now, it's probably going to be never, because it's one of those times where you have to make the move back, or you decide to continue with your life in Melbourne. And yes, I mean, there was definitely a career angle to it as well, which basically stemmed from my education. We were discussing, this was back in the 2015s and 2016s. So we're looking at emerging markets. India featured very strongly within the Asian, subcontinent. And with all the emerging, in the tech sector particularly, I know you've been mentioning a lot about the tech sector, but obviously Calcutta was not something that was a point of discussion back then. So And it was like, for me, it was like, well, I'd like to definitely go and explore the opportunities, because you see a lot of international students or professionals moving out of India. It could be from Bangalore and Mumbai and Delhi, and moving to Melbourne, Sydney, Australia, UK, US, but you seldom see the reverse.
Yeah.
So that was definitely a point of curiosity, perhaps childish as well, according to my family. It's like, you don't do this. It's something which is very, it's something that appeared to be very impulsive. So that was from a more business perspective. From a personal standpoint, it was definitely to explore and get to know my roots better, because obviously I've been dissociated and detached from it ever since my childhood. Just to correct you there, that a lot of my primary years has been in Australia as well. So adult and from my primary schooling, part of it has been in Australia. So I think when you're in that to and fro situation, you tend to always get bits and pieces of information about you. It's not really the entirety of it. So I think these two were the main elements that prompted my move back.
Yeah. And obviously, I know you said that you came back to Calcutta in the late 90s for a while to complete your education at Calcutta International School. But obviously, then still in that transition mode, you were moving back and forth. And then you were in Australia for, again, another 2 decades almost before you decided to come back. And we discussed this before the call that, while a lot of people who born and brought up in Kolkata and then for whatever reasons they decide to move out and then spend a few years outside and they decide to come back, much like me, yours is, you have an outsider in perspective, right? Because you haven't seen or experienced Kolkata in all its, greatness or all its, misery, but you've been immune in sort of that perception of Kolkata. So when you came back, like 2016, 2017, with an intent to be based here, what was your experience? What was the first reaction to the city that you came back?
It was overwhelming. It was, obviously, and just mind you that this was 2 years before the COVID, hit. So it was a bit like I'm here, and I didn't really intend to stay here.
Okay.
That's a misnomer as well. So I was about to, it was very fluid. So the idea was to, visit, have a change, and then maybe go back. Everything was very fluid. So I think a lot of it was very open. And as we just discussing prior to the call, that I did not have any preconceived notions because I have not transitioned with this city. So a lot of the things that were accepted norms or things that you were saying, understanding Calcutta in all its entirety, it was something that has not tainted my perception of the city. So I was seeing it for what it was, and it was extremely overwhelming but that can be triggered down to the fact that the contrast between Calcutta and Melbourne was severe. So I think for the first 2 years, which usually happens to anybody who's relocating and settling into a new city, it's always a comparison that's coming in. And in this case, it was like comparing apples and oranges, or even like like vegetables and apples, something on those lines.
Sure.
So it was like that particular thing was very difficult. But nevertheless, what really got me through was the history, and definitely my family played a massive role. But just the fact that it was just so different, and in a way, because I was seeking that difference, or else I wouldn't be here in the first place. At one point in time, it was just like accepting it and just letting go. There's this huge psychological thing that you have to kind of leave your expectations and settle into it. That's when you can understand the city in its entirety. If you have these comparisons, you can never actually fit into the city. These preconceived notions or cognitive biases, you just got to kind of let it go. That's something that I faced with Calcutta. So there was, it was difficult, but it was, now looking back at it, it was completely worth it.
And you mentioned that, you wanted to sort of discover your roots because you were always moving. So you didn't really have time to grow your roots in India per se, Australia for sure. And you wanted to, rebuild. And I quote from one of, your articles that I read about you about rebuilding your belief systems. And when you were on that exploratory journey, you were also taken in by a surprise news, and I don't know how comfortable you're talking about it, but you also have a very strong connection with the Tagore family and lineage. How was that discovery, and what was the exact context of that Tagore connection?
Uh, well, let's just take a step back and
Sure.
like analyze the quotation from one of my articles, rebuilding my belief system. Why was
Mm.
that the case? Shubit? Because a lot of the perceptions that I had,
Yeah.
even if it was at minimum, was based on people and communities that were outside, not Indian or not from the city of Calcutta. So it was I was
Mm-hmm.
taking on versions of the city which
Mm.
were perhaps not authentic, if I can use that term,
Sure.
customized within a particular framework. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously, when I mentioned rebuild my belief system, I think what I meant was a lot of the things you need to take different perspectives. I had a particular perspective about my homeland, about Calcutta,
Mm.
but it was all from people who had either left the city maybe, I don't know, 3 decades back, or they were
Sure.
just, they were not comfortable with the city. And I was taking on those perceptions, and that actually triggered a lot of my curiosity. So it was a bit like, is it really the way it is? Or do I really need to go back and maybe take a step back and objectively understand how I sit with that city and the culture and
Okay.
its philosophy and the people? So when I came here, thanks to my grandmother, so both of my grandmothers are related to the Tagore family. So
Wow. Okay.
the connection with the Tagore family was a byproduct of me investigating my roots. It's not that I
Mm.
knew about it. I mean, I may have heard
Mm.
it once from my father, but obviously, as you've said, that it wasn't really something that I could explore because I did not have that accessibility, and neither was I in that situation where I could, venture into those spaces and know a little bit more because I did at the time, to be very,
Mm-hmm.
honest. Um, so when I came back, and my grandmother, Amadida, so
Mm-hmm.
the maternal grandmother, that's when it's sort of that's like, do you know this is also your connection? So both my grandmothers, usually with the Tagore family, you see that the mothers or the grandmothers are related to the Tagore family.
Mm.
So my paternal grandmother, she's a great great granddaughter of Shunoyani Devi,
Mm-hmm.
who's a niece of Rabindranath Tagore and one of the independent Indian painters during the time.
Yeah.
And my maternal grandmother, I've just got it over here. So she has got this connection with Dwarkanath Tagore, which was a surprise, like later on. So Dwarkanath Tagore's son, who was Ramani Thakur,
Mm-hmm.
married Meenakshi Devi, and then obviously they had an offspring, Rashbilashi Tagore.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, she was married into the one of the zamindar families of Chandon Nagar. So there's a connection with this, Chatterjee family from Chandon Nagar. They had two sons, Madan Mohan Chatterjee and Chandra Mohan Chatterjee. His daughter, Madan Mohan Chatterjee's daughter, is Haridashi
Okay.
Devi, who married Uma Poda Roy, who's also
Okay.
with the Tagore family from Kali Prasanna Roy Tagore. Uh,
Hmm.
and then they had a son who's my maternal grandmother's father. So there's like that connection, and what used to happen is that they would have a lot of marriages within the family for some
Yeah.
reason
Yeah.
because of it's kind of it's a controversial lineage. I think we all can agree
Sure.
to that. So
Yeah,
so I
but
think
this family tree, I mean, I don't know if you have this mapped out on proper paper, because it can get a little confusing. All these different lineages coming in from various aspects of the Tagore family, and you sharing multiple connections with different branches.
oh yes, I mean usually what happens is it's like one of those coded I hate to use this word like barcode. So basically, when you're in one of those Tagore reads, you usually pick up one that's more well known. So in my case, it's more like Shunayani Devi. So that's the
Okay.
lineage. But
Hmm.
nevertheless, that's from my paternal grandmother. But from my maternal grandmother, it's actually Dwarkanath and Kali Prasanna Roy Tagore. Kali Prasanna Roy, who was married into the Tagore family.
Okay.
And it's like when you kind of, investigate further, you'll just find that it's a network of so many
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
families coming together, and it's a very I think it's known to be a very mysterious kind of a network. So that's where you need
Hmm.
to do a lot of research and find out from people who've had that experience or who still kind of know a little
Yeah.
bit more than me. So I was in that situation thanks to my grandmother, and
Yeah.
some extended family members. Yeah, it was definitely a surprise. Um, yeah.
And I'm just curious, so once you discover that, obviously every Bengali loves Tagore. There is this, huge cultural impact for the last 200 years that Tagore has had on
Mm,
Bengal, India as a whole.
mm,
Once you came back, you discovered all of this heritage that you're connected to very closely. Uh,
mm.
was there a process of rediscovering Tagore through his works that you went on?
Yes, because of my work as well. I
Hmm.
mean, a lot of my friends who are from the diplomatic community. I mean, obviously, when you
Yeah,
talk about anything to do with Renaissance or putting,
sure.
yes, creating modern India, I mean, Tagore and the family plays a
Hmm.
very important role. So obviously, it's a bit like when you're talking about being connected to the Tagore family, the point of inquiry or curiosity always pivots to, so what is your philosophy? Are you
Hmm.
more into, are you the typical orthodox Brahmin, or do you follow the more Brahmo kind
Hmm.
of version, or what is your take on nationalism? And and
Hmm.
these, I think these kind of knowledge definitely creates a space where you get to know more about the history of India. It's fascinating to be a part of that, but obviously it's something that your ancestors have done. So there's a lot of respect, but there's a
Yeah.
lot of curiosity and interest to find out more about their work and how they contributed to the political thought or nationalistic thought of India, or the cultural artistic themes that
Hmm.
India is known for. So yes, I mean that definitely played a role in making me more curious about where's the connection and how does that fit in with modern India right now, if at all.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yes, definitely. And it's
And I
always
think,
there. So,
yeah, go ahead.
wherever you go, sorry to cut you, wherever you go, in this time in Melbourne, there's like a Rabindranath Tagore's statue right at outside India-Australia Institute at Melbourne University. So it's not
Wow.
something that you can deny, because it's
Yeah.
something that's very inherent to who you are. But it's not something
Yeah.
that you can take, obviously you've not done anything to an extent, but you honor and you acknowledge your ancestor. And it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I was going to say that, Tagore is, and we wrote a post a long time ago that even though Bengalis and Kolkatans, other than like the Tagore family, are not related to Tagore, but
Mm,
Tagore has a place in every household, like a great grandfather. Like everybody hangs a picture of Tagore in their, in their homes. It's
mhm,
almost like a great grandfather, and everybody relates to Tagore almost as if he were family to them, because obviously the impact of his songs and impact of his poetry, impact of his stories, everything, and especially in, as you rightly said, in the socio-political cultural context of that time, what he produced in I would say in unbelievable amounts of creative work. The sheer volume in itself is mind-boggling, and then you add to
mm,
the quality of the work that is there. I think so. Bengalis, I think, have this, I would say, almost an avuncular love for Tagore, and they also think of him as family. And to have him as actually an ancestor, I think that's
mm,
more, I would say, takes you closer to discovering the work that your great 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 grandfather had done, in the 1840s, 1850s, 1860s. So coming from there, discovering Tagore, the lineage, the work, the history, and then also parallelly, adjusting to the Kolkata culture, which is now. I mean, obviously, you've been researching of Kolkata over the last 200 years, but now that Kolkata is, those cultural adjustments, managing your work, how did you go about doing that? Like, did you find societies? Did you find friends? How did you go about immersing yourself in Kolkata?
Um, I think for me it was I was just so hungry to know more at that point in time, and this was obviously before COVID, and pre and post COVID as well. So I think pre-COVID was more about work, where the thing was focused on Astrit. And yes, there were the core connections coming up, but my main focus was trying to get the work done. But I think it was a very philosophical time for everybody during COVID, right? Where you started valuing other things apart from work alone. And that's when just having that philosophical kind of reorientation in my mind set me on various, I would say, expeditions to know more about different segments of Calcutta society, be it like an ashram that I went to that really helped me understand Calcutta from a spiritual and political and social perspective. We talked about the extended Tagore family that really assisted me to know more about the family lineage in their home, which is the Patriarchata Tagore family. They're doing fantastic work, both the cousins that I have. And then obviously the consulate. That was a different perspective as well. From their eyes, understanding how, kind of the Australian version of understanding how Calcutta is, and that really assisted me in, finding my bearings rather. And then obviously the people over here, my friends, family. So there was a lot of things that were happening simultaneously. And for me, it was just about not only taking in the information, Shubhit, but more about organizing it properly so that it's required, or else you just end up being a mess, taking so much internally in your mind. So it was very important for me to organize, and maybe it's reflected on my LinkedIn pages. There are some things for cultural, there's certain things which are socio spiritual, and then there's the hardcore business elements in the Chamber of Commerce, kind of getting into their networks as well initially to understand what are the potential opportunities in Calcutta. So yes, I mean, it's because it's such an eclectic city that kind of exists both in the past and the present and the future as well, as you were mentioning with new towns development. So it's very important not to have any barriers in the way you understand Calcutta, and that's been one of my greatest learnings ever since I've come back to Calcutta. So not have any preconceived notions, and to understand that if this can exist, so can that. So.
And I think, I mean, because your education is diverse and very interesting, I believe some amount of that applied psychology or experimental psychology that you studied, you would have also applied. I don't know if you're allowed to apply that into your own life, into reorganizing and processing a lot of information coming in.
I think you do.
I think
you end up doing it whether you like it or not. And you're right in saying that, because the way my life, my education so far has been a bit of a mix. So I think it really helped me not change perspective, but take different perspectives and sort of move with it. So I think that's something that assisted me to navigate Calcutta as well. The different perspectives, like you said, the good, the bad, the ugly, things which are absolutely deplorable, things which are glorious. You take it all in and you realize the entirety of the city, and you just stop being judgmental, but more effective in your approach to making a difference in your own little way for the city.
Aparajita, I would love to switch gears a little bit here, and and we, our community members, would also love to understand, because you became an entrepreneur, you became a co-founder of Astrit. So first, I would like to understand a little bit how you started on this entrepreneurial journey, where you decided to become, instead of going and working for an organization or corporation, I'm sure you would have had plenty of opportunities and offers to do that, given your background and your education and your personality and all your accomplishments. But what made you decide to start your own firm in research and advisory? And then if you can tell us a little more about Astrit and what it does.
Sure. So this was back in 2019. So I came to Calcutta in 2017 end. So 2018 was just for finding my bearings. I was doing a couple of independent consulting here and there. I didn't really venture into the job market because I knew that I will not be, basically I was looking for a change. So basically I knew that I'm not going to be venturing into that zone anymore. Astrit was a result of basically trying to formalize what I was doing as an independent consultant, but with more vigor. So I had networks back in Australia. I was creating networks in India, and I thought, well, this is the right, there's a gap that I can fill, because at that point in time, there was not much buzz about Australia. And this coincided with the re-establishment of the Australian Consulate General in Calcutta. So it was very coincidental. I think that's how a lot of things progressed. So Astrit was there to connect the sprouting networks, the business industries, academia over here with the ones existing in Melbourne. And that's how it started. And then obviously we had, we really wanted to get into mentoring as well, because I had finished as a, had ended my tenure in Melbourne as an academic and a researcher. So mentoring students was very much a part of it. So wherever I could find those, opportunities, like there was one which I did for University of University, a workshop for mentoring and entrepreneurship. We did that as a part of Astrit. And then there was a lot of funded projects that we applied for as a, like a conduit or a coordinated member of from Australian Indian government. We tried doing that as well. So that was where Astrit was going about, and obviously trying to understand the opportunities and investment spaces in Kolkata, Eastern region, that could be, communicated back to my networks in Australia. That was the reason why Astrit actually was initiated or was founded. But obviously with COVID, things took a horrible turn and we had to restart again. We had to rebuild our mission, which we're still currently in the process of doing. But having aligned our interests and visions with a lot of the Chamber of Commerce's, I think that definitely gave us some visibility and push with the work that we wanted to do. So
yeah. And I think obviously, your, by virtue of your background of having Indian origin, Australian origin, who better than you to, bring about these bilateral conversations of Australian entities exploring the Indian market, Indian students exploring Australia for career or education. And when I was going through your profile, I saw that, you've been working with diverse, entities and sectors. So you've been working with universities and academia. You've been working with public and private sector businesses, government bodies, non-government bodies. So how did you balance these different stakeholder bodies in a way in order to sort of create something of value through Astrit's research and advisory services?
I think this is where should be the academic. There is a lot in the name, by the way.
Yeah, true.
So, this is where the past academic expertise, I would say experience, but experience comes in. When you're doing psychology, that's where I think a lot of I was also part of mentoring students in psychology when I first came here. So it's because of my diverse academic interests, which could be looked upon, differently in maybe 10 years back. But right now, it just means that you're more flexible, and you can give yourself an opportunity to focus on something that's integrated and innovative in this, in this day and age. So because of that, I could, use my transferable skills to manage different stakeholders, be it in government, private sectors, NGOs, socio-economic or socio-spiritual trust-based organizations. And that's how, as an organization, we understood where the opportunities are. Because sometimes what happens is when, especially in a new market, when you've got your blinkers on, so to speak, and you're focused on one thing, you're not very sure, or you miss out on things which are sprouting or which are basically coming up. And you have to keep, you have to keep your powders dry. You have to have that, you have to be flexible enough to move into different spaces, obviously, till you find your niche, so to speak. But until then, you have to have that flexibility and understand what Calcutta's core competency is. What is its brand? So I just stuck to the not-for-profit NGO sector, I wouldn't understand what the company had to offer. And I think all these decisions be it kind of funded projects, be it stakeholder management with the government enterprises, workshops, even writing our own investigative project based on the BGBS. It's because of all
Yeah.
these experiences. I think now I'm more confident
Yeah.
about my future vision for Astrit.
That's wonderful. And I think when you were saying this, I think what I felt is a lot of things happen in silos in any market, right? And especially in Bengal and Calcutta, where there is no one sector that's booming and pulling everything as a steam engine or or an engine, the other rest of the industries. So there's lots of things happening in pockets and silos, and it's about somebody who has the versatility and I would say the multi-disciplinary approach to explore these things or be aware of these things, to be able to connect the dots, to develop the synergies that could impact any project in a domain. But just the ability to be able to connect those dots, those network effects, can be extremely valuable for any organization, any enterprise trying to set up their business in Calcutta or Kolkata or the eastern region, or even a government planning to do some kind of a new infrastructure development project targeted at a specific sector. But there are obviously these, I would say, second order impacts or even inputs that can come in from other sectors, which usually get overlooked. But when something like Astrit comes in and ties all of it together and tells you what those impacts could be, I think that's fantastic. And you were talking about the BGBS. Was reading about some of those impacts that Astrid did. Signing MOUs, very important ones. The BGBS, the India Economic Strategy Report of 2035. So if you can share some amount
Sure.
around that.
Astrid did not. There are a couple of things over here. With the BGBS, so there are two things that were happening at that point. And during my stint as the chairperson of Indo-Australian Chamber of Commerce, we had an Australian lounge. And I was there definitely. I mean, had Astrid not existed, I would not be the chairperson of Indo-Australian Chamber of
Sure.
Commerce. So we were there
Yeah.
as an advisory to the Australian government, who were spreading their wings here in Calcutta. So that kind of brought in my stakeholder management skills. MOU with the Kolkata Port Trust happened during my stint as the chairperson in ANZIBC. This was very significant because since you do talk about emerging sectors, not only in the eastern region, but sectors that will make a significant difference in the world and in Asia.
Yeah.
Maritime sector of Calcutta is a crucial sector.
Yeah.
So when we actually ANZIBC, we decided to engage the then chairperson of Kolkata Port Trust to sign a MOU assisted by Astrid. That was a massive win for our organization because I think
Sure.
it was one of the first MOUs signed by the Kolkata Port Trust and the International Business Chamber. This is
Wonderful.
something that I've actually mentioned this time around in Connect India conference in Melbourne when I was there to talk about the opportunities in Kolkata. That was a big one. And what else were you mentioning? Sorry. So there was
The
the MOU.
India
Okay,
Economic
that
Strategy
that
Report.
that is something that is completely a government to government initiative. So this is like more the Australian government's foreign policy or bilateral engagement policy with India, and
Yeah.
obviously Calcutta featured there as one of the main regions of engagement, and therefore the consulate's reestablishment in Kolkata, or for the Eastern region in 2019, was actually their fourth diplomatic mission at that point in time. So Astrid has nothing to do with that, just to correct
Okay.
there. But definitely, we were extremely proud to be a part of that journey and assist them in whatever ways that we could during that time.
Okay. And Aparajita, to sort of sum up this, where do you see Astrid going from here in terms of the work that you intend to do, within India, with other countries? So if you can share a little bit about that as well.
Sure, should be. I'll be in Udaipur, Rajasthan in the next couple of days, and I've been in discussions with the think tanks there. And what I really want to do with Astrid, there were the two things that are happening, and you'll probably get notified of that later on in the months to come. The first one is we're actually advising a foundation right now that's being formed by a couple of our business associates. We would really like to work to to promote the textile industries of Calcutta and
Mm-hmm.
also make it like a center point for trade for Northeast India as well. That's something that we're working on right now. For Astrit, I'm really passionate about international affairs and geopolitics.
Sure.
So one thing that you were mentioning earlier on that when you have your when you have interests or when you've had experience with so many sectors, how do you actually bring it under one umbrella? And I feel
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that Astrid could work on or make a difference to would be promoting the promoting the political and the geopolitical perceptions from this region
Mm-hmm.
to the national bodies or to the center
Mm-hmm.
or to the world. Something similar to what our partners in Udaipur are doing. Because I feel Calcutta has earned that badge of honor, having such historical roots and
Yeah.
of thought. And I think this is where the ideas center can be
Mm.
fostered. Yes, obviously you have Newtown that's working on the development of industries and other places that are working very strongly on culture. But I feel a strong emphasis on having a think tank to promote the
Mm-hmm.
ideas from Calcutta, East India,
Okay.
to the rest of India and to the world would do wonders to this particular city.
Absolutely, absolutely, and more power to you and Astrid to facilitate that and make that happen. One question before we move on to our next segment, sort of, how have you seen, through your, conversations with the consulates, you've sat on different advisory boards, you've interacted with government bodies, both within India and outside. A very Kolkata specific question. How have you seen the perception around the city change in those conversations? Do you, and you can be absolutely, brutal and honest with us, but do you see uh, things to look forward to be, proud about, or do you see that there is still a lot of work that needs to be done for Calcutta to even feature as a prominent, entity or in those conversations?
Um, I think, well, obviously the conversation has changed. We've had, as I think in your weekly podcast, you mentioned the amount of the number of organizations, industries coming into Newtown, and etc. So obviously it
Yeah.
is changing in its perception of doing business.
Hmm.
I just feel that we undervalue ourselves, and I think
Hmm.
the roots of that are from the fact that we don't like to project ourselves as much as we should.
Hmm.
you know when you
Yeah.
look at certain sustainable development goals which are mentioned by UN, a lot of the work and the initiatives are done right here in Calcutta, but there's not much awareness. And I
Sure.
think this is we facts. NCR, I think it's known as NCRB, has mentioned Calcutta is one of the safest cities
Yeah.
for women 3 years
True.
in a row. So what does
Yeah.
that say about women empowerment and the culture that fosters safety, awareness around women's safety?
Hmm.
With the IWT event that I went
Yeah.
to in
Yeah.
for observers ORF,
Research
there were
Foundation. Yeah.
just so
The
many.
swag, the
Yeah,
swag event on
the
cybersecurity. Yeah.
swag event, yes, and there's just so many people who are coming about and making differences in this sphere, and I don't think it really gets the amount of coverage or visibility or media attention that it should. Maybe
Hmm.
that's got something to do with, I don't know whether I should say this, but our laid back approach, and it's okay. It's we're Calcutta. It's okay.
Yeah.
We know who we are. But I feel this is exactly the reason why there's a lag
Yeah.
in understanding and appreciating what this city has to offer to India and to the world. Sure, in
Yeah.
culture, you look at Durga Puja taking the center stage where it does come about because it's been given that UNESCO heritage tag. But
Yeah.
then what about other things, in textiles? I mean, everything, there's just so many things happening, but I feel that there could be more collaborative innovation that could take place for a city that has so much to offer with its creativity.
Hmm.
People
Yeah.
coming together, such as yourself, and promoting these, change makers, and then getting them to, not getting them obviously, but obviously encouraging them to work with each other for
Yeah.
greater impact.
Yeah. No, and I think what you just articulated has been something that we've been, a personal gripe, that what the outside world, outside Kolkata, even Kolkatans who moved out, they have a certain perception about the city that nothing really happens here. But the last 2 years that I've spent here have given me so much to share. And this is one of the things that I wrote earlier, that for the last 2 years, we've been putting out positive news of Kolkata every single day of those 2 years. And some days we have struggled in trying to prioritize what is the best positive news to put out. So we've never had a dearth of positive news about Kolkata to put out. So that's over 700 news items in as many days, where we had to leave out so many others that we couldn't feature. So there's so much happening, and our page is still very small, though we talked about the 20K number, but we're still very small. But in our own little way, we would want to highlight, and as you said, spread awareness, that a lot of other people get to know what's happening, maybe connect those dots, maybe build those linkages, build those networks, and just the general perception and awareness. In economics, we studied something called a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you continue to believe that it's not going to work, nobody's going to come and invest, and it's never going to work. But if you continue to believe that it can, and then that generates a positive momentum, and in the psyche of the people, that, hey, this is something that's happening and that can take forward, and then you can just take your hands off, and then it can go on its own sustained momentum. But
And
we will definitely try to do that more in the days to come. And we'll look forward to you for guidance and direction, to point us in the right direction, right industries, right people, to bring out their work to our community.
thank you, Shubit, for that. And just to add to your point, we talk about resilient supply chains, we talk about human resilience, we talk about resilient team building organizations. And the one thing that really stands out for me every time I think about Calcutta is the spirit of resilience. You look at people's lives, you look at people's just initiatives. You look them in the eye, and all you see is resilience at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't for the people, I think the city, and kudos to everybody who's been associated with this city and has just seen so much, and yet continues to maintain that sense of pride and passion, something that I've learned from the people who are residents of the city.
Yeah. And Aparajita, I know you mentioned that a couple of these association societies that you've been representing and been a part of, which I wanted to understand a little bit from you as well. And this is, again, not to get very gender specific in this, but a woman in entrepreneurship, a woman founder, starting off her first venture, and that too in a new city, in a multi-diverse sector. Was it especially challenging for you, or was it something that you embraced, and wasn't something that you felt you were hindered by being a woman in this world?
Like you've just mentioned earlier on, self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you think, because I didn't have that perception while I was hustling, that I'm a woman, therefore, these obstructions are that. I never actually had that in my mind. And for me, problem solving is not gendered. It's a problem that needs to be solved, and you do it to the best of your ability. So even if something did happen, I think it didn't really, I was probably oblivious to it, because I don't have those thought processes in my mind. In terms of obviously having like an objective opinion, and like we were discussing earlier on, I think in Calcutta, one thing that definitely the other cities can take a leaf from this particular city is that it is perhaps just slightly more kinder to women, who are basically taking different strides in their career. And I don't think it's something that you can separate out in terms of being discriminated against, or more so because of your strategic mistake. So I didn't have that. I mean, I probably, I understand why you'd ask me that question. I could have thought about it in that perspective, but for me, it was just about solving problems and getting ahead. And I don't think if you have these sort of thought processes that, okay, you're a woman, that's why you've been discriminated against. It could have been the case, but as you said, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you think that way, then that's exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You've got
and I was very, please go ahead.
No, I'm done. Please.
Okay. No, and I was very happy to see that you're also giving back in your own way because of the journey that you've had. And you mentioned mentorship is something very close to your heart. So you find opportunities to mentor young students. So, and you mentioned and you referenced the IWD, the International Women's Day events that you had with Observer Research, where you talk to young women in cybersecurity and what they could expect in the careers, in the careers there, and especially women in STEM, which has been a worldwide topic that we don't have enough women in STEM fields. So if you can share something around that, how your experience was in those events, mentoring these young women.
One thing I've realized, I think this was also from the investigative report that we did. It does not only refer to women, but basically anybody who's in the academic field right now who's about to graduate. I think they require more understanding of the different opportunities out there. Cybersecurity could be a domain of interest, could be a field. That particular awareness is sometimes lacking. So I think as a person who's partially from STEM, I wouldn't say I'm from STEM particularly, but nevertheless, it's about making them realize, not only women but also men, who probably didn't consider cybersecurity or integrated management, or for that matter, national security as a career choice. So it's about putting the options in front of them and being very objective about the pros and cons, technicalities of that career choice, and allowing them to make their decisions. That's something I faced in IWT this time, the Let's Swag event, where you had so many women like, how do I get into this field? Where do I start? And I suggested that you can do short courses and think whether this is something you'd like to do. You take those small, short courses, understand for yourself whether it's doable or not. And I think when you're about to make those decisions, just because I'm a woman, I can't take short course. I just think it's ridiculous.
Sure.
It's an assault on anyone's logic.
Yeah, and I think it's because what we've traditionally seen is men, women both, women to a lesser degree, because obviously the first barrier to overcome was higher education, and then getting into the corporate or the professional sphere, corporate, non-corporate, government, private. But I think we've always had very straitjacketed options, like few options that were placed in front of graduating or post-graduating students, that these are 4 or 5 things that you can potentially do. But what I'm seeing right now in the last few years is more options are coming up. You can pursue a career in cybersecurity, which was not really a hot field then. Everybody's running after AI and ML right now, but the kind of awareness that I see in today's graduating youth in terms of surely the number of options that they have has, I think, been a liberating experience for them. And what it gives them an opportunity is to explore their interest and aptitude across a various set of options, which they did not have before. Even if you're not good in something, you still had to do it because the options were so limited in your awareness. I think that's definitely changed in the last few years.
Absolutely agreed. When you talk about, I think there was this discussion during the event regarding equality and equity. Giving options pretty much cuts across both. You need to be provided with the options instead of having that standpoint that, no, I'm not even going to be considering this option because I'm a woman or I'm a girl. That's just ridiculous. So I think it cuts across that basic fundamental right. But I don't think Calcutta particularly has a problem with that.
I would say that. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. A lot of people might disagree, but I definitely would agree with you on that.
I don't think the provision of options is a particular barrier over here. It's more about seeing it through with the opportunities present. So something which is individualistic, such as having the option, but then what? That is where I think Calcutta can definitely up its game, so to speak.
Sure. Which brings me neatly along to the last few questions, or last segment, so to say, which is about Kolkata. And I know we've been talking about, can we be absolutely candid? Yes, we can be absolutely candid, because we love this city, and I think when you love somebody or something, you should always be open to sharing constructive criticism where you don't see something going as you want that to happen. So from your vantage point, because you've had both an inside out and as well as an outside in perspective of Calcutta for many years now, what do you see are some of the good, the bad, and the ugly that you've experienced in your last 6-7 years that you've been here?
Well, let's start with the bad. Let's start with the ugly.
Okay.
It's intense. I mean, whether I can say it's definitely intense in the entirety of its just opinions and people, and it's I like to term it as a creative chaos. And basically a city is made of people. So that's definitely something which is it's very overwhelming. I wouldn't use the term ugly, but since those are the options available, I'll just fit it neatly in that category. The bad, as I said, undervalued. We do undervalue ourselves a bit too much. That's something that we can definitely improve on. The good, being in Calcutta and just being around people from the city, their passion, their intellect, creativity, their defiance for some reason has just exploded on my psyche. I've just learned so much from the people of the city. It's one of those cities that embraces you for who you are and you can just be yourself, which is very daunting if you don't have that, that kind of essence sorted out within yourself. That's
The confidence to be who you are. I think if you have that already, Calcutta is a great place to bring that out, make that flourish. But if you're still searching for who you are, then it's possible that you might get lost in the chaos that you mentioned.
Even then, Shubhid, I think even when you are, because I've been through that phase as well over here, I think Calcutta offers you these very difficult situations. I don't know whether it was my life or whether Calcutta in general, but it really, it because of its intensity as a city and because of its varied expressions and opinions and when you discuss it makes you think. And that's very important. It challenges your perceptions about yourself, about the world that you're in. And I think it is, it's something that can really turn your head upside down, but it's going to set you on the right path eventually. So if you're in for that sort of a ride, definitely it's a city. That's the best part about it.
Sure. One last question, Aparajita, before we let you go. The sun's already set, so I don't want to eat up into your Sunday evening because tomorrow is Monday, and a lot of people would hate me for saying that. What is your vision for Kolkata? What makes you optimistic about Kolkata?
My vision for Kolkata. I think, yes, there's really nothing to, we talk about reclaiming the past, but I think we need to move on into a more innovative and unique future. I'd like to see it as the city of the Eastern region that harnesses a lot of intellectual thought. And you can say it used to before, but as we were mentioning during this podcast, having those integrated thought processes where creativity meets innovation, meets IT, meets philosophy, and we can have these center of excellence
and spirituality. I think you mentioned earlier.
Yes, spirituality as well. Redefining the tenets of spirituality and how that feeds into social awareness and sustainable living. These are all buzzwords, but it's doable in Calcutta because of the creativity that it fosters. Having center of excellence that teach holistic approach. I remember somebody telling me, it was one of my students from the workshop said, it's all about pluralistic approach. So I think Calcutta literally aligns to that particular approach. Everything should be plural in nature. And I think that's it. It has the ability to harness that sort of thought. So that's my vision for Calcutta in the future.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And I would love to play a part in that.
Absolutely, and we would love to see you at the front and center and more power to Astrit in exploring how it can, as you mentioned, go into different domains to bring awareness to certain things that are already happening, but they don't get enough, I would say, attention from government bodies or private enterprises. And more, I would say, all the best for your workshop conference in Udaipur that's coming up. So all the best for that. And we would love to have your thoughts and inputs and, dig into your mind to find out what other avenues, sectors, people that we can reach out to and showcase them from Kolkata Calling. We would be both benefited because we get to learn about all these wonderful things that are already happening in Kolkata, and maybe in a little way we can bring awareness to them as well, who have been working maybe unappreciated, unrecognized for a very long time. So that's probably what we would love to get in touch with you for as well.
Thank you, Shubhid. Again, congratulations to you and your team. 20K, it's not good enough. You need to aim higher. And, good luck with the next guest. And I really hope that, you venture into, as you said, bringing in people from various, even people who are outside Kolkata. those who have,
Yeah.
those who have a connection with Kolkata. I think that will be
Yeah.
a fantastic way to expand Hello Kolkata's horizons as well. So thank you so
Definitely.
much.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Aparajita, for taking time, and it's been a pleasure listening to you, talking to you. All the best for the future of Astrit, the conference, and for Kolkata as well.
Thank you so much, Shubin. All the best to you too.
You have a good evening. Bye.
You too. Take care.